All right, everybody, welcome. I'm really glad to see your faces. It's like I didn't realize how much I needed contact. Hello. And so it's just really nice to see you and talk to you and hear your voices and be as close as we can without getting anything from each other. All right. Yeah. So today what we're going to be doing is just going over the modified presentation, since all of the world events have happened, about presenting your portfolio. And Leilani's here with me moderating, and we're going to just chime in back and forth with each other, as well as you guys chiming in to get your questions answered and to find out information about basically the newest process of presenting your portfolios, because we've never done it this way before. And then with some basic information just about presenting your portfolio in general, no matter what the world circumstances would be like. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So give me 1 second to make sure I can do that. Hello.
While you're busy doing that, I'll just say, please go ahead and type in the chat box. I'll take a look at the chat box. And if you need to, you can also raise your hand.
Yeah, to raise your hand, you're going to need to open the participants box.
I'm not seeing the participants box at the bottom of my screen like I normally do. Is that a settings issue? Are other people seeing it?
That could be very well my.
Hover your arrow over the bottom of the screen, Hollins, and see if that works.
I have invite, share screen, reactions. Oh wait, hold on, let me see more. Oh, yep, I got it. Sorry,
okay,
thank
great.
you.
No, don't be sorry. It's wait a minute. Bear with me. This is the first time I've shared a screen, so it's I got to get used to what's going on up here.
No worries.
Here we go. Okay, are you guys able to see that? Welcome to your CRT virtual workday. Great.
Yep.
All right, so our presentation is in here, and it's going to be under CRT presentation planning, I believe, which is slide 9. So you'll be able to actually access this from there. All right. So the first thing that that I want us to do is, you guys, I believe all of you know who I am, but for those of you who are new to me, I am part of the planning team, but also certified as of last year and an instructional coach. So, and love all of you dearly. Let's start with just, oh, wait a minute. Okay, Lay, this is the old one. So give me a second. I'm going to go to the updated one. So sorry,
okay,
guys.
no worries.
Give
Just in your Google Drive?
Yes.
I didn't link the new one. I'm sorry. I'll do that.
Yeah, no worries. And we'll be able to, you guys will be able to get that. Now you just get to see my whole Google Drive.
Yay!
I know. And be scared by 7,000 folders. Oh no, there it is. Okay. Okay. All right, so the first thing that I want you guys to think about and just populate in the chat, and Leilani and I are going to take care of looking at trends and making sure we get everything answered, but I want you just to populate it with what are your thoughts and your concerns about presenting your portfolio right now. And that can apply to anything. It can apply to the current situation right now and all of the modifications that we may need to make. And it also can apply to just normal things, no matter what the context would be when you're presenting. And just kind of populate the chat for a minute with any things that you would like to make sure that we will address, so that we can keep looking there and make sure that by the end of this, you've got your questions that you have right now answered. And then going forward, we're always available to continue that conversation with you guys. But just think for a minute, you know, what do you hope to get out of this and go away with that would make you feel good and like, you know, you're on this and you can do this. Okay.
Call is a new word.
It's a beautiful word. Yeah, because you're right. There's so much that you could include.
Mm-hmm.
And as this populates, you guys feel free to respond to each other as well, or to bounce off of people's ideas as they inspire you. Okay. That's a good question about time. We'll definitely address time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
All legitimate concerns.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're going to touch on all of these things. I love you all. I think you all are your worst enemies sometimes, though, reading some of these comments. Okay. Yes. We have something for this. Miss Gibbs, what's your first name? And pardon me for, oh, Diane, got you. All right. It's nice to meet you. I'm sorry I haven't introduced myself before.
Diane lives in Crozet with us.
Where, Diane? I'm in Orchard Acres in the old part.
I'm off Lanetown by the railroad tracks.
Oh, we could walk to each other's houses as long as we stayed 6 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
Just stand on the curb and wave.
Seriously. It's really nice to meet you, Diane.
Nice to meet you. I've probably been by your house. I walk my dog all the time.
Oh, my house is the one with the orange door on York. So there you are.
I'll stay 6 feet away and just yell hello.
Okay. I'll wave from my window. Okay.
Yeah, looks like that there's in the chat box, there's some apprehension about presenting. And uncertainty about how long it needs to be or about the time factor, and just some need for general confidence, I think, in what we've been able to accomplish this year.
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place, ladies, it's just ladies, eh? So far. Because what we're going to focus on today is we're going to focus on telling our story with confidence, precision, and impact. So moving forward, I always like a metaphor, and I know that the workday started with a metaphor and trying to think of your journey as a metaphor. And so for me, when I presented my portfolio myself, I had to grab onto what was my tool that I had for use all year, and it was conversation. So I couched everything in form of a conversation. But really, what you're doing is you're telling your story. So all of you who teach story elements, here we go. Every story of course, has a setting to start with. And so our setting, first, we're going to be dealing with place and time. And so there's going to be a location for you to tell your story. And guess what? That's from the comfort of your very own home, more than likely. This is, Leilani, I want you to chime in with other information as you guys have discussed this part. But basically, right now, we're thinking that we're going to be Zooming with each other, and that in that way, you're going to set up your own presentation venue in advance. You're not going to be coming to a place in the county office building. So you're going to need to ensure some things for yourself, like having all of your technology straight, your power source, your space, and just 45 minutes. If you look down at the bottom, it's a total of 45 minutes of interruption-free time so that you can present, and that's for the actual entire presentation, not including, you know, prep time in advance or come down time on the back. So you adjust that based on what you want. The actual time will be determined as we set up our appointments, and those, we'll talk about that a little bit more, the time frame for that and what those are, the 2 windows. But we will be setting up the times and sending you out a Zoom invitation. We figured that would be easiest, so that you guys then can just click in like you've done for all of the meetings so far and be able to join and present. And just some time sorts of tips, you know, set up yourself 10 to 15 minutes early, get your presentation opened. Do not follow what I just modeled, which was very poor modeling of not having your correct presentation opened. And for those of you who would feel nervous, which I think is all of us, I really want you to, during this process, when you start to get nervous, I need you to figure out what your go-to calm phrases are for yourself. I know we all have them, but you need to be able to say those things to yourself. Give yourself some affirmations and some positive self-talk. For me, it was, I'm going to tell my story. My story is important, and no matter how this lands out, my story is going to fall on ears who will hear it, and who will affirm it, and who will take it somewhere, because the things that happened this year were really significant. So I want you to figure out what it is that you tell yourself to keep yourself going and to believe in yourself. And I want you to practice that along with really deep breaths, because we know that that does clear the mind, and it clears it of all of the serotonin and all of that hijack chemical. So you need to keep breathing and affirm yourself. Recommending connecting to Zoom about 5 minutes before your appointment, and just so that you can be ready and be well connected and have the maximum time to present. And this will answer some of your questions. Your presentation, your presentation time is 30 minutes to present, and then you'll have 15 minutes for questions from the panel. And I'm going to share some of those possible questions, and you can ask about more as we go through. So that's about the where and the when. Now, to kind of prepare for the where and when, you can practice, and this really addresses what a lot of people have been asking. We had originally thought we were going to set up practice sessions where you could practice with us, and we still are, but that's going to be you connecting with Leilani, Lars, or Ayana, or one of the instructional coaches. I noticed Vicki already offered herself up in the chat as well. And yep, and any of your instructional coaches, all of them, the more you practice, the more comfortable you are and the more fluent, and it really does help you just de-escalate because you know what you're going to say. It'll help you get comfortable with Zoom, find your pacing. And another recommendation I had is practice with somebody maybe in your house that doesn't really know the work And they may ask you questions to explain, and that might be helpful. And then this came up in the chat also. Enjoy yourself. This is your story. This is your time to shine. It's only 30 minutes, and that's the sad part, but because there are so many of you that are so wonderful and doing the work, the time is short. So you do want to speak clearly, but you want to let your passion come through and be yourself and tell your whole story. So as you're figuring out what to call, think about that. Think about, if I leave this out, will my story have as much impact? And if the answer to that is no, it won't have as much impact, then put that in, okay? Leilani always talks very well to this, is that it's not just your data, but it's the love and the passion with which you speak your story that really speaks to the presenters.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that, you know, a lot of you were in the CRT certification scoring session with me this morning. Raise your hand, like not virtually, but just in reality, if you were in that session. Okay, so many of you were. So we talked about the difference between a 3 and a 4. And a 4 being really about embodying this work and having the confidence to teach others. Some of that could definitely come through in your presentation, couldn't it? If you use these, I think that Kim is giving you some great tips here about letting your passion shine through. It could make a difference for you between just knowing the work, having examples, having impact on student growth, or really embodying this work, a 3 and a 4. So I would say definitely, you know, use your data wisely. Do your highlights, things that you are really proud of, and just you know, use the time to be as convincing as possible that this is your work.
Mm-hmm. And I think that will help move you beyond the nervousness, because we've heard you guys talk about the work and get excited and dig in, and when you do that, everything else kind of falls away from you. So let yourself get into that place, because that's where it's going to really come through, and you're going to kind of transform to another spot, and you're going to kind of come out of it 30 minutes later having done your best presentation work possible. Now, this next slide is one that you may return to frequently. It's got the dates on it. You've already been exposed to the deadlines before, I think, or seen it in Leilani's communications, but this is kind of a summary sheet. So sign-ups are now for you to choose an assessment window now through Friday. Portfolio presentations will be concentrated in the first week of April. Or not the first week, but the 1st through the 8th, which is not actually a technical first week, but those days. And then the submission deadlines and the notifications will all follow the windows. So you've got the choice of the early window or the window that occurs a month later. But regardless of when you submit, there are 3 mandatory items, and that's going to come out in the communications that are sent out. But just so you know ahead of time, there's a submission form in addition to your portfolio and your essay. When you're turning, yeah, Hollins. All right, unmute yourself, Lovey.
I'm a little confused here about, it says signups. Oh, the sign up for the presentation is April 1st through the 8th, but the presentation dates themselves. Okay, now I understand the slide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's a good clarifying question. Good job. All right. When a heads up when you're submitting on all of your items that are linked into your portfolio, into your essay, as well as your essay and the portfolio itself, for the permissions, just put anyone with a link can view on everything, because we have the potential of having reviewers and assessors from multiple places outside of ACPS. And so that gives access to everybody for everything within our closed group. So if you do that, that saves and makes it smooth flowing. You see the presentation date windows there. That'll help you make your decision about your sign up for your window choice. And then the notifications will be either at the beginning of June or the beginning of July. And that's as we stand now. Leilani, does that seem like it's going to change much with what we know currently? Unmute yourself, sweetheart.
Unmute. Okay. Those are tentative, but they're firm. We think that no matter what is thrown at us right now, that we could do Zooms for those submissions, for those portfolio presentations on those dates.
Okay.
We can't imagine a scenario, unless folks are sick, we can't imagine a scenario where those presentation dates don't work right now.
Yeah.
And for the first window, we're definitely going to do it on Zoom. For the second window, we may consider, just depending on the climate and how things are in June, in mid-June, we may consider doing some of those live.
Okay.
Okay, so just want to let you all know that there's a possibility of that, but we will have to wait and see.
Yeah, and communications from the Office of Engagement and all of your equity specialists is always so thorough that you will definitely receive information from them that'll be clear. And if you have questions, you can always reach out and ask anything because they're on it and they're with you. Okay, so
Kim,
yes,
I'm seeing a couple of questions that folks want addressed in the chat box here.
Okay.
From Emily, we sign up for a window by this Friday, is that right? So Emily, on Monday night, I opened up a sign up form for assessment window choice. There were not a lot of people who signed in on it. And I can resend you that, but you could look at the slides from Monday night again and see where those signups are. I can also send it to you after this session. Probably tomorrow I'll send them out. And then I'm seeing another one. Can you say more about the people outside of ACPS as assessors?
Okay.
Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, but please jump in. In the past, and I'm not sure who the actual assessors are this year, but in the past we have had the panels have been made of people from different roles within ACPS. So you have admins, you have teachers who have gone through certification, you've had the equity specialists and people from Office of Engagement. But then we've also had specialists from UVA, and I don't know all of their official titles, but I know, what's Joanna's title, Leilani?
So Joanna's, so we had have a couple of friends who've been with us from the beginning on this, and they're from the Diversity and Equity Advisory Committee. Okay. Joanna Williams is a professor at Curry. Blair Chaliwa, also often on panels, is a from the counseling department in Curry School. We have a couple of partners over at UVA who actually helped work through the implementation and creation of this program. So there is a strong possibility that we'll have some of our folks out of ACPS on the assessment teams this year.
Right, but they're definitely steeped in the work and have been along the journey with us, so they know, even though you don't know them, they know exactly the kind of work that you're doing, and they're experts in the field, so they will be able to, with confidence, show up and assess you fairly and completely. All right. Great questions, and you actually preempted me because I was going to have you raise a righteous hand and ask your questions about the setting. So Are we? Oh, Hollins Mills has a righteous hand. Oh, no, she just forgot to put it down. Your hand isn't tired, Hollins? All right, Miss Chooks, do you have a question still?
I do. Are the dates binding? Like if we choose the first option and we find that like we may not be quite ready yet to present and want to do a second option, is that okay? Or once we submit what date we want, we have to stick to that one?
Leilani, can I defer to you?
We will be building assessment teams based on the dates and sections you select. So we would like, for as much as possible, when you commit to that presentation sign up in April, that you please stick to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're going to be tempted to freak out. It's guaranteed. So if you freak out, you can just say you're right on schedule. And so think about that and learn, think about yourself and what you know to be true when you're signing up, and just do you the right way. Don't think you've got to be brave and bold and sign up for the first window and all of that. Like, just be honest with yourself and sign up where it makes sense. Okay. Leilani has populated the chat with the window preference link there too for you guys. Okay, so going on, in every story there are characters, and so just briefly, I think we've touched on all of this, but just to make sure, you are the narrator of your journey. Okay, this is your journey, and we've already talked about sharing with passion, but you are going to be the narrator of your portfolio to us. And so you want to share all of your epiphanies, your heartbreaks, your ahas, and your desires with confidence, and choose those things that speak to your shifts and your moves this year. There's going to be a lot of things that you have experienced this year, even if this pandemic had not occurred. So, adding that in adds another layer. So I think when you're doing your sifter out to figure out what rises to the top, your assessors are going to have your whole journey on your portfolio. And so you're going to include most of those things, but what you share in this oral presentation is going to be the highest points, the things that hit you the deepest, the things that caused you to shift your mindset the most, and the things that are going to cause you to remain on this trajectory forever, because once you start, you really can't go back. And those are the things that you want to highlight. Everything matters, but some things just are have more weight than others that you want to really emphasize with the presenters as having impact on your practice and from here moving forward. The other thing I wanted to mention was that your panel is going to be about 3 to 5 people, no more than 5 people. I know that sounds like a lot of people, but trust me, there have been more. So that will be your window of numbers of people. So do not panic. They're all people just like you, and you will know many of them. It'll be like walking into a room of, oh, hey, and you can just tell your story, and it will be actually quite relaxing once you get there. I know the dread is still a little bit real. All right, are there any questions about like the people? I think we've gone through a lot of those questions already. No? Okay, fantastic. Okay, the plot. This is where it thickens. All right, so as Leilani alluded to, you really want to reverse your story arc. You want to start with revealing the ending first, okay? Reveal your data, start with that, put your best foot forward, give them the punchline at the beginning, and then you go through the explanation and connecting the dots explicitly to how you got to this data and its impact. Okay, this is where clear and concise language And I also emphasize active voice when you are explaining things, both in your essay and when you're presenting. I tend to default to passive voice, which is, you know, third person, like using lots of TION words and linking verbs, you know, have and was, and sometimes people can miss your point. Just state your point out flat, very clearly. You know, I did this and it resulted in this. Just state it plainly so that there's no question that, and it's very explicit what happened and what you saw in that. And I want to encourage you, if it feels like it is appropriate and important to your work this year, go ahead and presence what I've termed plot twists. Sometimes we have incongruent data, or we have things that didn't land the way we thought, but it's significant. And we tend to not want to include that, but I want you just to ask yourself, would that help be impactful in your presentation? All right. Leilani, do you have anything that you want to really emphasize as far as this is concerned?
Yeah, I think that it's important to be honest, and some data and some projects and some of our sub-indicators don't always work out as well as we want to, but we want to see the PDSA cycle where that you've tried something, you've reflected on the outcomes, and that you have thought about how to do things differently. We'd actually like to see you go through a couple of PDSA cycles, or take us through a couple of PDSA cycles in your year, so that you could tell us, so we can see like clearly what your thinking has been around CRT this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that presence plot twist one.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is put your best foot forward. I always say, like, I actually wrote down on my paper before we got to the slide, lead with data.
Yeah.
Because we want you to presence your equity audit and what you learned about your students and their data and your teaching and your own data before you start. Paint a contextual picture for us of what you were trying to impact.
Yeah. Yeah. When Leilani says PDSA, for those of you who the letters get lost, plan, do, study, act. It's what you do every day. That's just the name of it. Okay.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for translating for me.
Yeah. I throw the acronyms around far too much myself. So now you want to reveal your conflict and your climax. And I know that sounds counter to the way you think you should present sometimes, is that you should build up to it. But no, we want to punch in hard and then build in the background about how we got this way. So these are questions and considerations that we want you to take with you as you're preparing your presentation. What were the results of your CRT year? What were you most proud of? And also just a caution. Sometimes we can spend a lot of time in our characteristic one explanation describing a lot of things. We get lost in demographics or contextual information. But if you are correlating that information to shift moments, that is where you're going to have the biggest impact, is correlating them one-to-one. I noticed this, or I saw these things, or I learned these things about myself. It led to this. These things about my students led to this. So if you can pair them up, then that's showing what you noticed and how it impacted the work, or what you used it for. Okay.
Those teacher shift moments are really important, folks. It's like, what did I learn and what did I do differently? Mm-hmm. It is super important.
Yeah. And these are the things that, I don't know if you've thought about this, but your work, when you get certified, is actually, we're going to be using those as exemplars. So if it helps to think of your authentic audience, your work is going to multiply itself in example to other teachers. And so if that helps you to even frame it, to be able to share with other teachers about this incident and how this was effective, think about it that way. All right. And then finally, I think we had a lot of questions in the chat that relate to this, is how do you package your story? So first of all, we want you to remember that your panelists are going to have your information ahead of time. So they're going to have your portfolio and your essay ahead of time. You can trust that they're familiar with your work when they are there assessing you. But I've had questions before about, is it insulting or is it repetitive to say things that they've already read? And I want to assure you that it's not, that what you're doing is you are sharing your story and you're presencing all of the facts and the data and the shifts and all of the information to bring it back to their memory to paint your entire story. So don't think that it's repetitive or anything, and don't assume that they're connecting the dots, because they will have read numerous projects, and so they need to hear from you what they should connect to your story and your information. So be very explicit and say everything that you want them to hear coming from you, but they will have background from before. Now, that second piece of information is just a consideration. I know last year a lot of us dealt with, do we present linearly with something like a slide deck, or if we have our portfolio that is like a website, which is what I call multidimensional, do we just use that? There are some impacts of your choices, and in retrospect, I would have made an entirely different presentation on a slide deck when I went in, because I felt like my mind was jumping around through my portfolio, even though I had notes, and I was going from item to item purposefully. So I want you to think about being in hijack a little bit when you're presenting. Like, it's always nervous. You've all expressed that in some way or another. And so think about what is going to be simplest for you to be able to present coherently and feel like you've done your best job, and then present with that format. Make slides that count, or make pages that count. Impact with your facts, and if juxtaposing or contrasting your information for effect is helpful, especially with those mindset shifts and things like that, just consider how you're presenting your information for the greatest impact. And then lastly, there's a resource linked here. There are other resources, but you can choose slides like Slides Carnival that already have slides designed to present certain types of information, so that you don't have to think about that layer of development for yourself. And it's worth looking to see if that would be something that would be helpful, instead of trying to create everything from scratch, because you don't have to.
Okay, Kim, we have a question from Monica. Should our essay be organized as suggested for the presentation? i.e., should we start with data, then link to other information when writing our essays?
Oh.
What do you think, Kim?
So let me tell you what's going to be done with each one, and Leilani, then I want you to chime in too.
Okay.
When your presenters are looking without you there at your essay and your portfolio, they have the rubric, the frameworks in front of them. And so I think two things have to be taken into consideration. One, I think the most important thing is what makes sense for your journey. But two, what's the simplest way that you can express that so that your readers can follow along and see clearly and convincingly, because that's the rubric language, that your evidence points to these aims, the ends. Like, it's not a creative writing prompt. I will say that I went round and round with like 7 or 8 versions of my essay. To me, the clearest is to follow, for your essay, to follow the characteristics, if that makes sense. I think designing your portfolio along characteristic lines also makes sense because it's simple. And it gives them a background that's in order. And then when you present, you can lead with data. But that's one person's opinion. Leilani, what would you say?
Well, I've seen it done in several different ways, and I wouldn't want to be prescriptive about it because it's such an individualized process, and it depends on what you want to do, Lanika. But I would say this, 2 ways that I've seen it done before is I've seen essays built around the characteristics. So like they've just like gone CRT, instructional context, CRT 1, CRT 2, CRT 3, and followed the guiding questions in the essay. Then the portfolio presentation with an essay like that looks like, okay, here's my instructional context, here's CRT 1, here's CRT 2, here's CRT 3. So it's very like linear and based on the essay. I've also seen people, and what I was trying to encourage people to do last year is kind of get out of the box of that framework and think about your data, what it tells you, and then what you applied and how you and your students grew. Your data, what it told you, how you and your students grew. So like, let's look at the data points. That's another way to structure it. I kind of enjoyed last year when candidates pulled me out of that CRT like linear framework and showed me what they accomplished, and then through the framework. It's either way, and it's really how your mind works. It's challenging. It's challenging, but any way you choose to organize it, will follow along with you. It's an individualized process.
Yeah, and I think you just got 2 different descriptions based on 2 different minds, the way they work. And also, I think I was coming at it from the outside in and then the inside out, having done it, but then also like looking at others, like it's 2 different perspectives. So I think the biggest piece of advice is be true to yourself and what resonates with you, because you can share that with passion and clarity. And I think those are the 2 biggest things.
Definitely. And can we have one more question, if it's okay, from Emily?
Yeah.
Okay. Emily says, as far as this chapter of the school year, Emily, I like how you kept with the metaphor here. Good job.
Yes.
As far as this chapter of the school year, how do you suggest incorporating our work from mid-March onward? I think that's an awesome question. We can't ignore this, what's going on right now.
No.
Dr. Harrison has already said that he thinks any portfolio will be incomplete without an inclusion of what's happening right now and how we've become CRTs through this process. And I thought that was really interesting. Sometimes when he says things like that, I push back on it. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? They already finished. But you know, as I was thinking through it and processing through what our new instructions are, I tend to agree with him. How are we CRTs right now? How has CRT and the way we look at it prepared us for this moment in history and this time with our students and families? What can we say that's going to be important for our entire community moving forward through this event? I'd like people to address it personally.
Yeah, and I think your point regarding CRT preparing us for this moment, I think that is the perfect thread. It's not like it's something that's different or standalone. It is just that the plot has gone in a slightly different direction, and that happens to authors. I hear a lot. You know, the story takes on a life of its own, and that's what's happened. And I think that it very definitely is still part of the story this year. And Vicky's asking, so what about people who have finished their work, edit or revise to add? I think that we all had an intended vision for our work. I think our work is still going on. So I think as you work through this and work through your mindset shifts and the things that you're realizing through this next chapter, as Emily really aptly said it, I think that it has real application to add, and it has power to add to all of our work. And so I'm like Doc and Leilani, I really would hate to miss that and your interpretation, how it's impacted you and your practice and your outlook.
I would say consider this a time to collect data on how well you've been able to build learning partnerships this year, based on what your partnerships are doing for you and your students right now.
Mm-hmm.
Consider this. A lot of people have said, I missed my opportunity to give summative assessments. This is a summative assessment. This moment in time is a summative assessment for you to find out how well you did at building learning partnerships this year.
Your check and connect data is actually probably going to be richer than some summative assessment data that you could have gotten.
Yeah, and Vicki, it is something we'll communicate more. I mean, it's just something we're sort of landing on as we're talking more through this and figuring out how to address where we're at right now. And I don't think that it needs to be like a massive revision, by the way.
Mm-mm.
But I think that it could be. I mean, are we also saying that if they're completely finished with their work, are we saying that there wasn't going to be anything else that happened from March 15th to April 15th that went into the portfolio? Vicki, could you want to unmute and talk to me a little bit about this? Just.
I'm just seeking clarity because I know I'm working with several people on either their micro-credential or their certification. And so I just know for my own clarity, and I do feel like some people probably would have been like, if you're looking at the rubric and whatever, like you could probably get a 3 for a micro-credential or for a certification if you stopped around March 15th, right? Like that would have been possible. So not that there isn't stuff that people would do, but I think there are some people out there who are extreme planners and like wanted to get it done before spring break. So you know what I mean? Like, I just think there were just some people out there who were probably done or nearly done. And I just want to make sure that I know kind of directions just to support.
Yeah, I get that. Like, I would bucket that notion that you can be done between March 15th and April 15th. And I need to think about that a little bit more. I think my initial interpretation of what to do with our certification portfolios was that, look, most people are almost done. Let them finish based on that data they have when school was happening. And I feel like I've turned a personal corner on that in the last several days here. That especially since school is off now for the rest of the year. The school year hasn't ended, even though we're not meeting with our kids anymore. So I feel personally a little bit more passionate about how does CRT get demonstrated through this time. And now I'll be quiet.
No, I totally understand. I'm just trying to make sure for my own, support. And when I talk with people who haven't attended any of these meetings today, or, you know what I mean? Like they did work days early in March or in February. Just thinking about those people who, well, I know will be communicated with, but just to ease some of the like apprehension that might be coming out of people who are like, but I finished, or just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah.
No, that's excellent clarification. I think the only thing I would add to that is to, and this might come up as a little bit of an issue with questions, but, how do we think of CRT? Is it a product or is it a process? And that's, if we can kind of check some things off of our list, which sometimes we can because we're using academic achievement assessments and things like that. But once you get hooked, it is a process. It's a lifestyle that, you know, you can't back that up. So yeah. All right, are we good with packaging at the moment? Yeah, I don't see any righteous hands. All right, so lots of stories have great epilogues. One of my favorite is Tuck Everlasting, if you've ever read it. But one of the most powerful things that, to me, in presentations from people was where they were going to go after this. The phrases that I heard were, I felt like I just got started, and that may be truer than ever this year. And they shared where they were planning on going next in the next years and, you know, after that. And I want you to not rein yourself in on that, because that shows a mindset as well, where you can see yourself going, where your mind is going off to, and next year I'm going to start with this, and you know, and I have these plans, and it would be better to do it this way, and blah blah blah. Let yourself share that, because that definitely tells about how this has taken hold as like a process forever for you, and they'll want to hear that. Now, the last thing that I have here is all of that preceding is how you present your portfolio and how you're telling the panel what you want them to hear. But they have that last 15 minutes, and we're not going to be killer on the time. I know that Leilani in her sessions is really sweet about saying you've got 2 minutes or you've got 5 minutes, and so I'm sure there will be a warning process and things like that, so that you don't run up against the brick wall and you have to, you know, hurry up and say your last 5 slides in 30 seconds. But the panel is going to give you time to answer some questions. Either clarifying information from your presentation, or they might ask you some harder questions. And I've tried to encapsulate those questions here, some of the hardest questions that I've heard, just to give you a heads up, so you can try to formulate some of the answers to these if you don't have answers that you feel like are presentation worthy. But things like, how does this work CRT and not just best practices? How did this work impact student achievement? Who benefited from the work? And how did you know that the strategies that you use impacted student outcomes? They're longer answers, but in some form, those questions have come up in sessions that I've been in, or I've heard Dr. Harrison ask people when he's trying to get us to think harder. So I just wanted to put those in front of you. I want those to sink in also, for you not to be caught off guard by things like that. And I know that we've had really great discussion, and that we're almost getting to be 2 o'clock, and I don't know if you have other Zooms, but I just want you to have a chance to think, are there still questions that you have at this moment? You've been really thoughtful, and you've asked some really, really good questions. All right, so it seems like you guys are full. And so if you're okay for now to have this and let it settle, we will leave you with that. But Leilani and I both want you to know that all of us are available to follow up once you've had time to think, and throughout the whole process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this time we've gotten to spend together. You guys are, look at you. You guys are the last 6 standing right now. That's amazing. That's amazing. You should be very, very proud of yourselves. I know your students and families are greatly benefiting from all of your dedication.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So, tell your story, impact lives. You're already changing the world. And we just want to say how much we do love you and we believe in you, and we're here for you nonstop. So please holler out for anything. You're amazing, and don't forget it. All right. We'll see you later, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.